Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome folks, Today the Hungry Gamer is back with another game preview. And today we're talking about Dungeon Twister, the 20th anniversary edition from Ludically, designed by Christopher Bollinger. And I do apologize if I mispronounced any of those names. Now before I get started, please do note that what you're seeing is still in the prototype phase and is subject to change. And also please turn on your Klingon subtitles because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that's where you'll find those corrections. I will also point out, for those of you who are familiar with the game, you'll notice that my map is short. There are actually 2 more tiles that would go on to the side. However, for recording, I've taken 2 of them out because you will still be able to get the idea of how the game works. I will also point out that in this campaign, there are going to be miniatures that you can use. However, since my perspective is top down, you can't really see very well what they are from the top. So with that in mind, I'm using the tokens, which you do use in the game, but you don't use for the entire game, but that is what I have here. And with that said, this is a 2-player game, though there are some expansions that can expand it to more than 2, and I believe there's also an expansion that can make it solo. Which ones are going to be included in the campaign, I am not totally sure. But at its core, this is a head-to-head game where each player is taking control of an identical team of characters. Each player has a thief, a troll, a wall walker, a mechanorc, a wizard, a warrior, a goblin, a cleric, and, well, and that's it. And your goal is to get them out of this dungeon that you've been put into by a mad mage, and the dungeon is going to be twisting and turning and changing the paths, hence the name. And you're going to win by getting a set number of points, often that is 5, and you'll do that by either literally getting one of your characters all the way across the dungeon and out the other side, or you'll get points by killing the other player's characters. And you're going to do that by taking actions of moving and attacking and so on. Now, if you are not interested in how this game is played and just want to jump into my final thoughts, then you want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game is played. So what's going to happen is, on your turn, you're going to select one of the action cards that you have, and there are some limitations at the beginning of the game what you can play, but you're going to take anywhere between 2 and 5 actions. And you're only going to be able to play those cards once until you've played all of your other cards, so you have to think carefully. And so what you're able to do is you can move around, or you can flip over a tile. So if I were to say flip over this tile right here, I'd flip it over, just like so, and you can now see that I have a path that I could then move around through. However, I also had these 2 tokens on there that I'd seeded at the beginning of the game, and the other player will then get to choose where on the board those tiles or those items are going to go, in this case an armor and a magic wand. Then each of my characters has a certain stat. So this character right here is the mechanorc, and it has a movement of 3 and a combat value of 2. So I used 1 action point to flip over. I could use another to move, 1, 2, 3. Or let's just say that we started like this, and this will matter in a moment, and I had enough points. I could go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and I could stop here on this twister. And I could take an action to literally pick up the tile and twist the whole thing like so. And the mechanorc's power is I could then choose if I wanted to twist it a second time, and we'll just pretend that that's what I chose to do. And all nice and simple. And as I said, you'll notice that there's these other chips out that were seeded at the beginning of the game. And what's important is when it gets flipped over, the other player is going to get to place your characters and or items. So if this one here was flipped, like so, then the red character would get to place this goblin wherever they want. So maybe they want to put it all the way over here, so that's a long way to go. Or maybe they want to put it over here because they know they have some people that can kill it over there. Then blue would place the others, and they would be able to make the exact same choice. And so we'll just kind of place those there. And here we have a wall walker, and here we have a wizard. Let's say we just place it like that. Now the other thing that's out there is you'll see that there's going to be traps, and those are things that your thief can deal with, or if you find a rope, you can deal with that. But there's also going to be doors. And doors obviously are going to block movement, but depending on your character, you can do something about that. The thief has the ability to simply unlock doors and open them just like so, and then they can be closed. However, the warrior has the ability to break doors, in which case they are broken and they can never be opened again. And as you're going through, you're going to be doing your very best to get through and collect items that you need. You might be collecting treasure, which will give you more points if you get out, a sword, which gives you better combat, a speed potion, which gives you extra actions, etc., etc. Now, on occasion, as I mentioned, you're going to enter into combat. We'll just pretend that Blue's warrior has made it all the way over here and has picked up the rope, and you'll see you can just put it right underneath like so, which lets them cross over the traps, and we'll also pretend that right next to the warrior there is an opponent like so. And we'll also pretend that the enemy cleric is right there next to them. So for an action point, you can enter combat. And when you enter combat, you're going to look at your combat stat. In this case, for the warrior, it is 3, while for the cleric here, it is 2. So if nothing else were to happen, the warrior would wound the cleric. However, each player also has combat cards that they're going to be able to play. And just like with the movement cards, once you've played one, you can't play the same card again until you've used all of them. So we'll just say, for the sake of argument, that the warrior is confident and they're going to play their +1 for a total of 4. Meanwhile, the cleric is worried about this and they play their +5 so they do not get hurt. If the situation was reversed and the cleric was attacking the warrior, in this case then the warrior would be wounded and he would be flipped over and halfway to being dead. If on another round, because you can only do one attack on a character per round, the cleric were to attack again and defeat the warrior again, and the difference then is the warrior's base attack value would be 0, and they would only be relying on their cards. If they were to win combat again, the warrior would be killed, and that would give the red team a single point. And that's how the core of this game works. You're going to play until you reach the set number of points, gaining points by either killing the opponents or by getting yourself all the way through and out the other side of the dungeon. And that's how this game works. So, what do I like about this game? The first thing is, this is one of the thinkiest games I've ever played. It is just so much you have to think about and the repercussions of every single thing you do, especially when you start twisting the dungeon. And not only how is that going to affect you and your characters, but what's that going to do to the items? What's that going to do to your opponent's items on your board? What's that going to do to your opponents? How is that going to put you closer to your opponents? And it's just constant things you have to think about, you have to figure out, and it's very satisfying when you make a good play. It's just really cool. Along with that, I've never played anything like it. This is an old game, and it definitely feels like an older game, but it's a unique game. I've never played anything remotely like it, and it's very, very satisfying as you're going through. The next thing is, I really appreciate one, the way every different character does something different, how some of them encounter others, how all of them have some way that they can pretty much help the other players. Well, I guess not the troll, he just kind of is out there and smashing things. But I really like the way that works. It's just an amazing menagerie of abilities that you have that you're able to deal with and use and try to deploy in different ways. And that brings you to the next thing, which is the way you deploy. You're going to deploy out and you're putting tokens all the way over on the other side of the dungeon. You're starting almost to your escape, but of course by doing that you put yourself in danger, which might give your opponent points. And what really makes that work is when you flip that tile over, your opponent gets to place your pieces and you place theirs. So there's a lovely bit of gamemanship even in that. Even as you're deciding where should I start this character, well, I could start real close and try to get out, but that might put it in danger. In fact, the last game I played with Skippy, what wound up happening was he started with one of his characters right at the edge, very close. Now, I flipped the tile over first, and so I was able to place him right there in front of one of my characters that just stepped right up and just went smash, just killed it right away. And it was awesome. But that was the risk that he took, because it could have worked out that he had managed to flip it over during his turn and just walked right out of the dungeon and got those points. So it's just really satisfying all the way down to even placing the tokens and choosing when to flip a tile.
really, really satisfying. The next thing is I like how the combat works. I love the mind games that go into it as you're playing it, because there's times when you know, well, I could play my 6 and I cannot lose. And the other player's like, well, I could play like a 3 or a 4 and maybe I win, which means they're going to have to play a high number. But on the other hand, they probably think I don't want my character to die, so they're going to go hard to guarantee they win. So I'm going to play a 0. And even when it happens to you, it's satisfying because you know you've been outthought in just a lovely, lovely way. In fact, I play decently regularly with Skippy. We've been playing for a while on BGA, and I don't think I've won that matchup yet. Every time we fight, he outplays me on the cards. I kill him sometimes, but he always outthinks me on the cards, which is super frustrating and satisfying at the same time. The next thing I'll say is you didn't really get to see it in the video because I was shooting top down and it's a little harder to see, but the minis look good. There's some really good looking minis, and that is, I don't know if that's an upgrade from the original game. I feel like it probably is, but lovely minis. They look really nice. They're going to look really good once you paint them up. So what are my quibbles with the game? Well, the first thing is those minis, when you turn the board, can slide around a bit and you can lose where they're supposed to be. The next thing I'll say is this game is super chess-like. It's one of those games that you almost have to think 30 moves ahead. Well, if I do this, then they can do this, and I do this, they do this, but then they could turn this tile, which will open up this and this and this. And it can be overwhelming. Analysis paralysis is a definite danger in this game. And along with that, and I guess because of that, this is a game that is almost all skill. Actually, it is all skill. I guess you can say, well, we don't know what tile is going to be under there when we flip it, and maybe you don't consider skill the kind of outthinking them when you're playing your card, but this is a skill game. Someone who's played this a lot is going to wreck you without question, and he's going to wreck you for a while before you start to finally figure out how the game really, really works. And the next thing I'm going to say is, just make sure you understand this is not a dungeon delve. This is a race game that is very, very chess-like. It is not a delve, it's a race. And the last thing I'm going to say is it's a very unforgiving game. There's no catch-up mechanic, right? You either win or you probably get smashed. That's not fair. I'm sure I always get smashed. I'm sure there are some people that you can play with and it will be close, but you get what I'm saying. This is a game of skill and it is very unforgiving. So there you have it, folks. As always, if I've made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp so I can get to the end of the Klingon subtitles. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.